The Discourse starts right now with Cheryl Oates and Erika.
Welcome back to The Discourse. There has been no shortage of political news over the summer, and as students headed back to school this week, some hot-button issues got even hotter. Today, we're going to cover a lot of ground. Get comfy. We're going to go from Edmonton classrooms all the way to Ottawa in 45 minutes.
That's right. We are tackling the government of Alberta's age-appropriate book policy, the backlash they took this week, and how they responded. But that's not all. We will be discussing the likelihood of a teacher's strike and finishing it off with Pierre Poilievre's stand on guard principle that has the Liberal government playing defense. So let's start. Hot topic, age-appropriate book policy.
Which already, starting with the name, carefully chosen words by Erika, the age-appropriate book policy. Not what I would call it, but let's get into the background before we
I did put
debate
in parentheses.
the choice of words.
I put yours in parentheses.
Those are not parentheses.
Book ban.
Those are air quotes.
Nope, those are quotations. Touche. I did, for those listening and not watching, I did make air quotes. So moving on. Okay,
so a little bit of background. Earlier this year, in May of this year, the UCP brought in this ministerial order that created new criteria for what books are appropriate in Alberta schools. And the new rules say that books with sexually explicit content would be banned for all students, and that those students in grade 10 or higher could access books with sexually inexplicit content. The ministerial order made it really clear what sexually explicit content was and what sexually inexplicit content was, and required all publicly funded and independent schools to remove, review library materials, and publish their library listings, including everything they were going to pull from the shelves, and provide a formal process for parents to have their say as well if they wanted to. Now, for generations, up until now, we have trusted that the experts, the librarians, the teachers could decide what was age-appropriate material for our students and could police what was appropriate learning material for students checking library books out of schools. But as has been the case since the UCP took power, now they think they know better. And so that is how this journey of censorship began. But it didn't end there, did it, Erika?
No, it did not. And we're going to cover it. But I want to take a little bit of a backtrack for those that may not have watched our May 29th episode titled Ballsy Throne Speeches and Banned Books. So we got into the intention behind the government requesting several books to be removed from specifically K-9 school libraries. And most of those were found in Edmonton and Calgary school districts, almost exclusively, actually. So the 4 novels I know we talked about in that episode, or at least in theory, and that the government has posed as the 4 that they deem meeting those thresholds of the ministerial order and the intent of the ministerial order that demonstrate pornographic imagery, harmful acts, sexually explicit actions of minors. And these include 4 books, which were Genderqueer, Fun Home, Blankets, and Flamer. Now, I will say, that happened. We have this whole issue with 200 books by Edmonton Public School Board that we'll get into. But I, as a 39-year-old woman who do not deem myself prudish in any way, shape, or form, went about looking at some of these images because I was like, what really could be that bad? The minister looked awkward talking about some of these images in May. It happened again in July when it seemed like their point wasn't maybe landing with media and that there was pushback. I looked at some of these and I can say at my age, seeing cartoons of individuals performing oral sex on each other, and you're going to have to mark this explicit now, Cheryl, not because I'm swearing, but because of the things I'm talking about, that they're putting collective semen into a Mountain Dew bottle. That is actually one of the pictures I saw. So not sure what age is appropriate or what that's suitable for, but I am actually very glad the government is taking this position, whether you think they're overstepping or not.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so this is classic conservative politics. Let's find the most extreme examples and pretend that there's a rampant problem in society that we need to solve. We'll talk about this later with Pierre Poilievre's stand on guard policy, but I don't disagree. I think that book is, what you've just described, I haven't seen it myself, is probably inappropriate for any age of school child in the public school system at this moment. I don't disagree with that. But was it necessary for the government to bring in a ministerial order and have teachers go through all of the books in the schools looking for what they are deeming inappropriate content? I don't think so. Like, I think we found 4 books that are certainly outliers that I wouldn't want my child to bring home from school, but I don't think that those outliers depict the level of resource and the level of capacity that we have dedicated to censorship in Alberta now. I think the government took it way, way too far for political distraction and political points.
And I would agree if it wasn't how much we saw pushback of like, well, that's only in these schools, or this is all about the LGBTQ2 plus community, and the attacks both by the NDP and the ATA, or at least like groups of teachers criticizing that, like, oh, if you gave us librarians, we would not have these books. So I think what happened is they introduced something to say, hey, we did this audit, as we talked about in our May 29th episode. They did this audit. They found these 4 books and are saying, okay, now going forward, like, here is a process in place, because there was all this pushback and like blame on the government for these books being there. So it was like, okay, you're going to complain and not be collaborative in this effort. We'll put the ministerial order in place. Now, I will say I read the ministerial order before this. It is quite lengthy. It does maybe create confusion. And I know now the government is walking it back, that it blankets too much. But I think that they felt that they had to put this in place because there was no measurement or even trust that this would be the process that the public schools are going through to ensure that we are actually doing this thorough deep dive into.
Well, there has been a thorough
So they
deep
might have gone
dive
too
now.
far. Yeah, but I was going to say,
That was
I think they might have gone too far now, but I think it was in reaction to how it was first digested too.
But I mean, this is a lesson learned in censorship. Like, it's a slippery, slippery slope when you want to try to police what books are available to school kids and what criteria those books fall under. And the Edmonton Public School Board made this very clear. They provided a list of 200 books that would be removed from their school system under the UCP's ministerial order, so in compliance with that ministerial order. And they included lots of classic novels, including The Handmaid's Tale, which we can talk more about, including Brave New World, including Forever by Judy Blume, books that are and have been important content, especially in high school curriculums to this point. And the public pushed back against that as well. And what we saw was the province say, I mean, Daniel Smith called the Edmonton Public School Board's 200 books vicious compliance, saying that they took this ministerial order too far. But if you read the ministerial order yourself, it is not vague. It is very detailed what meets the criteria of sexually explicit and sexually inexplicit content. And so Edmonton Public School Board is basically just saying, like, you want censorship? You've got it. This is what your rule says.
Are they, though? Because I think if that was truly the case, Cheryl, Calgary would have done it. Every other school board across Alberta would have done it. The fact that it was only Edmonton that proved that these 200 books meet the criteria has me question, is this a political move by the Edmonton Public School Board to make an issue and point out? Absolutely. I think that the government's probably realizing that ministerial order could have been less prescribed and more on the intent, which I think we both agree what the intent of doing this review would be. And so I think it's a huge play by the Edmonton Public School Board, because I think that if this actually was the case and felt across all public school boards, we would have saw that. But Edmonton's the only one that came out with this radical list of 200.
Well,
Half of
Edmonton
them are
made
like,
the choice to dedicate the resources to do it. Like, if you read through what the ministerial order says, all of those books fall under that. So what are we saying? That we should leave it up to the experts and teachers and administrators to decide what books fall under that? Well, that's what we were already doing in the first place. If we were going to say that we just trust teachers to decide what is appropriate material, we didn't need this ministerial order.
right, but why didn't Calgary? Why didn't any other school board? And I think that's a big question for me, who lives in Edmonton and seems it's the one with all of the NDP seats. It's deemed more left-leaning than any place in the province. Like, to me, this is political. And I get what you're saying is that they put the resources there, but why? I think the why is that they wanted to make political hay out of this.
Well, and I think that's the wrong question. The question is, why did the government need to bring in the ministerial order, and what did the ministerial order mean? Edmonton Public School Board, whether you believe that this was vicious implementation or whether you believe that they were just following the rules set out to them, these books meet the criteria. And this is the criteria laid out by the government. Why did the government need to do this? And did it really think through what the implications would be if it wanted to remove every book in every school at every grade level that mentioned sex?
I would say the government did it because, and I'll speak more to, I think, Calgary and Edmonton. I don't want to blanket all public school boards or school boards because a lot of them have already put these mechanisms in place. They failed students by putting these books in classrooms. And so they got caught. They were the ones that were exposed in the May press conference, being the places with these 4 books. And so they took offense to that because they were the ones that were needing these huge guardrails. They were needing to be prescribed these things because clearly it wasn't sticking to them being able to actually be responsible and go through books. So now I think that they were pissed off because they were like, listen, you exposed that we were the ones that had these books on our shelves. We're blaming that you guys don't give us enough money. And then in return, you guys do this ministerial order, which I think is definitely handholding public schools. It's definitely the government intervening. And I support intervention when the people doing their job or aren't doing their job. And in this case, I think that was fair. Edmonton Public Schools pissed about it. Probably understand why they would, but I don't really understand putting all your summer resources into going through this just to say F you to the government with these. Like, no one really buys. I don't think putting out that list of 200, sure, it proves a point that maybe the ministerial order needs revision, but it doesn't make them look good. I haven't heard from people that are like, man, the EPSB really showed the government. It was like,
but no one's talking
this
about
is what this is what
This
this
is
is what they did
exactly
over the
what they
summer. But
wanted.
come to Edmonton. Come to Edmonton.
No, but this is, I mean, if you look at the public discourse around this and you look at what's bubbling to the top, most people are not watching detail by detail by detail what's going through this. What they will remember from the book ban is that Daniel Smith banned The Handmaid's Tale, with some help from Margaret Atwood jumping into the conversation.
Mhm.
But that will be the takeaway from Albertans. And if you have political actors, let's just, say, I don't know this for sure, if you have political actors inside the school board and their goal is to discredit the government, they have checked that box in this exercise. They don't need people to say like, yay, go Edmonton Public School Board. You really, stuck it to the man. They need the government to be discredited. And in this case, that is most Albertans' takeaway.
And I don't disagree. I'm just saying the intent of it is not to look like they're complying or they're looking out for children. Theirs is to be dicks to the government. And kudos, you accomplished that and you changed perception of Albertans.
I know,
but is that really the job of EPSB? Like, shouldn't their job be focusing on like teaching students? If your school board, who you have jurisdiction over, is shitting the bed on what they're supposed to do to protect children,
we're talking about 4 books that
with
are
freaking people getting blowjobs. Like, they're not 4-issue books. Like, I honestly encourage you. Like, I was like, holy shit when I saw it. And I'm like thinking about our kids seeing those and they're past the, they're past that age
this
appropriate.
Isn't like a blanket school district problem. Like, we're not looking at saying like there is a systemic problem with blowjob books in schools. Like, that's not
the title of this episode.
That's nothing that the government. That's not the issue that the government is dealing with. If you have 4 books that got into schools that have not got into schools, let's just deal with it like any organization would. Let's find out how those books got into the schools and change that rule or move that person or make that directive clear. But saying a blanket, like we are going to, from the top down, ban any book that falls into these categories and they must be removed from schools by January 1st, like that seems a little heavy-handed.
I would agree if we didn't see the pushback from the public school boards when that initial thing was like, hey guys, we found these 4 books. This is inappropriate. We're asking you to go survey. And the huge pushback and discontent they saw from public school boards, it's like, maybe you're not getting the point here. It's not to like crap on anyone. It's really, let's just correct this wrong and move forward. And now the EPSB has doubled down on like, you pointed this out. We're going to now point out your flaws or what we believe to be your flaws. Now, you're right. Like, they are winning the public perception game of what are people going to remember. Margaret Atwood, I think many of us have read her literature and know that the literature it's not sexual content. It's more like the literary component. But again, like that's also subjective. Why wouldn't EPSB come to the minister and say, here is our 200 book list? Do these meet the criteria? Instead, they had no conversations with the minister and released this publicly to make hay. Like, it's again, I don't think you
But
can,
this is
I
like
can't side with EPSB on, I get why they did it, but they could have done it in 7 different ways that would have got us to the right
this is
point.
the issue, and this isn't the first time the government has done this. We have all collectively agreed that teachers and those who work in our public schools, we trust them to look out for our kids. We trust them to make good choices about the books that are in our schools and the books that are part of curriculums and what they're teaching in the classroom, just like we trust doctors to help us make medical decisions for our children. And time again, the government, this UCP government and this premier has decided that they know better. And that is what is at the heart of this, that the government is coming in saying, we just don't trust teachers and administrators anymore. You can't be trusted to decide what content is available to students in schools. So we have to come in and tell you how to do your job. And I think that is what is at the core of this, is that teachers and administrators and school boards disagree with that.
I'd say both of those are where those organizations and entities have started to also play a lot of politics. And I believe, again, I'm not huge on intervention unless the bodies in which you oversee, which is public health, education, and then municipalities, when they're not doing their jobs, then you step in to use the authority that you have as a provincial government. And so I don't think the government really does want to do this. But since putting kids in the school system versus being someone without kids in the school system, my perception of teachers has changed. My perception of how the ATA runs has changed. I used to work in the Ministry of Education, like when I first started out in politics. And that was when we had an incredible education system, world renowned. And
Thank
this was
goodness
in
you
like
were there.
saved it all. Everyone's gonna be like, that's the downfall. It was Thomas Lukasik was the minister, so there's that. But anyways, but I was there and saw firsthand, like, I believe that they were hard workers. I think the challenge is over the last 15 years, they have got so political that I think that they're missing both health and education, are missing the point of like what their primary job is. And so I do think there's times where the government has had to step in, not desirable, but in a worst case scenario. And I think something like Blowjob Books, is I want this title of this podcast to be, is one of those things. And then I just think that they were pissed that they have field government, and sure, be critical that it's a theme, but I also think that they're pushing where they should be pushing, because I've lost faith in like the education system. I wouldn't put kids in Edmonton Public.
They want you to lose faith in the education system, in the health system.
Who?
They want
the teachers?
No, the UCP.
They're doing a good job.
They from the beginning of Daniel Smith's leadership worked to discredit public institutions and worked to consolidate power inside the government. And they have been doing it systemically across the board. And in this case, someone pushed back and proved the lunacy of this policy, and they don't like it. Like, I have little sympathy for that. And yes, we know that you have strong views about teachers, and we're about to get to that because we promised this episode would be 45 minutes. But before we get to that, I just wanted to say our show tries to break down politics and inner workings of government to our listeners. But did you know that Macamie College's Applied Politics and Public Affairs Diploma will give you the skills to do that yourself? The 2-year evening online program not only gives you tangible skills to launch a career in government and public affairs, but also provides 3 practicums that expose you to different career paths within the industry. If you are someone who wants to drive change at the local, at the provincial, at the federal level, visit macamiecollege.com/programs or use the link in our show notes to learn more about this one-of-a-kind program that prepares you to shape public policy, lead community initiatives, and make your voice heard. And props to Erika, who built this one-of-a-kind program from the ground up. It's been really fun to watch you, and I got to teach my first class this past week, which was also very exciting.
Well, they told me that they really enjoyed you, so everyone's happy.
And they also told me that you forced them to listen to the podcast.
I do. And then we talk about bias. It's a very important thing. I think more people should. And we actually went over the bias conversation where we watched one of our episodes, and they identified their bias as them knowing me and not knowing you. And then I was like, well, we'll see where you are after Cheryl teaches. So I'm interested to see see where that goes. Like, sadly to most that like to criticize that I'm a talking head, I disagree with the UCP on some things. I don't really listen to anything anyone tells me. I do and say what I want to do and say, much to, I'm sure, some of my political party's chagrin. Um, this is actually like my whole issue with how what the situation in classrooms is actually because of having kids in the systems. And like I said, we had one in Catholic, we had one in public. What I would do if I had kids going into this system now would be very different than what I think it would have been before I had kids in the system. So I think there's incredible teachers out there, very much. And leading into our next topic, believe that a lot of it does come down to how the union runs and how they're actually supporting teachers. My brothers-in-law are both teachers, and it's very interesting to hear what they say about the percentage that they would get an increase. And it's very different for them as people that are in the system for a long time versus others. And it's not apples to apples on this 12% increase. And like with that, I mean, going into the whole teacher situation. As of Thursday, when we are filming today, there is no official strike, and the two sides stand at a stalemate. This comes back to teachers voting overwhelming in the support of a strike mandate in June, and they now have until October 6th to give a 72-hour notice to the government of their intent to strike. Meaning if they give notice, say this Friday, they could strike by Monday. Now, in case you missed it, the Alberta Teachers Employer Bargaining Association, known as TEBA, which is made up of 8 government members and 7 school board trustee representatives, has threatened to lock teachers out if they deem their actions hurt students or families. I'm sure we can get into that. But if you haven't seen, the two parties were asked to go to mediation, in which the Alberta Teachers Association bargaining team walked away. And I quote by the ATA president, Jason Schilling, "Talks are off until the government shows it takes teachers' concerns more seriously." So let me be clear. They got exactly the deal they asked for, which has evolved since with TEBA, which is 1,000 new teachers a year for 3 years. That's 3,000 more teachers in the classroom, which was cited as the primary issue this spring. In addition, the wage increase of 12%, where, as I mentioned before, some members would be getting up to 17%. So instead, they want fewer teachers and more cash and salaries, and yet they claim it's about kids. Like, I'm kind of getting to wit's end of like, what does the ATA actually want? How is this about children anymore and not a union trying to fill its pockets? And at the end of the day, like, I truly believe if this was about the kids, they would have went on a strike before school started, as opposed to waiting potentially till kids and families and are into routine. And that's something that's like very great for as we know, with like young kids, you want that routine. And now all of a sudden you're going to hijack that and go out. I think if it was about the children, they would have done it long before we came back. And now I see this again as a political move by the union.
Well, your bias is showing, for one. So
Good.
mark that.
Good.
That can be class.
Let's
aware. Just start with like the basics of labor negotiation strategy. If the teachers have gone on strike in the summer when nobody's kids were in school and nobody was reading the news, they would be less likely to see action on their file. And so, yes, it is inconvenient if teachers go on strike when kids are supposed to be in school and parents have to figure out how to get care for them. But that's kind of the point of choosing a moment when everybody's paying attention. Like, it has to be clear to the public that there's an impact, that this is important, that this is a valuable, essential service to you, and for you to engage with it. And the job in any labor negotiation on both sides is that either the government or the union wants the public to be on their side. And if you strike when nobody's paying attention, then nobody cares and nobody's on your side and there's no pressure on the government. So the teachers right now, it's their job to, 1, raise the profile of this issue, and that can only happen when school's in session, and 2, make it look like it's the government that's holding up this deal and forcing teachers to take the action that they are. And when you say it's not about the students, like, yes, teachers are pushing for higher wages. Yes, teachers are pushing for more funding in the education system. If they are able to make progress on these things, even if it is inconvenient for the time that they're striking, in the end, that will be better for every student in every classroom in Alberta.
Okay, so I want to ask you about that because I get the strategy. I mean, I've advised other sides on how to do that. You're right that you want to get attention, but to me, that's actually, then it's not about the children, it's about the teachers. And then just say that. Like, just
But it's
own
not.
it.
They're
Be like,
pushing for things that are
they're asking
really.
for more wage. They're asking for more wage after they got it, Cheryl. TEBA came back, or TEBA. I'm not sure if you say, do you say TEBA? But TEBA came back and gave them more teachers to address classroom sizes. They gave them and that's a lot of people. I know that we have inflation.
But
I
it's not a
know that
lot of
we have.
people. It's not a lot of people when you look at how Alberta's
Then what's
population
the
has grown
number?
and how underfunded the system has been chronically for years.
But that's not a UCP problem. That is not a
It is,
UCP
though.
fault. It isn't, because you guys gave them 0, 0, 0, 0 when you were in a shitty spot. Look at our Q4.
But I'm not talking about wages. I'm talking about the fact that the NDP government funded enrollment growth. So with every new student that came into the system, money was allocated to the education system to pay for that student entering the system. If
And
you
we
keep
still have
education,
huge amounts. We
but
don't do
if you
less
keep,
than the NDP.
just let me finish. If you keep education funding flat, and you have thousands of new students entering the system every year, which we do, you are cutting spending for each student. That is a cut. You are not funding enrollment growth. So each student is getting less, and doing this year after year after year since 2019 has left chronic underfunding in the system that 3,000 new teachers will not fix. It's better for sure, but it's something that Alberta needed years ago.
Okay, but if you didn't fund the increase, they're pushing for a higher increase. So there has to be some ownership. This is where I don't get how the NDP can just crap on it, because it was like during a bad economic downturn that you guys faced, and I'll give you that, you froze them. The last increase was under Redford. And so I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying I believe in the increase. I'm fine. Like, let's give them the increase to a fair market price. The Ministry of Finance came out and said that they did an assessment across all of Canada, and we are giving our teachers a fair market rate. We've caught up from their criticism that they were underpaid. So we've done that. Checkbox. The second thing is we have invested a lot of funds, maybe not as much as the NDP would, but we're also fiscally responsible. 400 million additional in dealing with
It's
growth.
not fiscally responsible to starve a public education system, though. Eventually, you're going to have to make up for it. Like now.
Okay, but where? Like, what is enough? Like, this is what I don't get. It's like, so 1,000
Maybe we
new
should
teachers,
not
better
spend
than
billions
nothing.
of dollars fighting coal companies. That's a good start. Like, I could find a few
Right, but
places.
like that's so could I on where the social sector could also be cut to things where I would like
I'm
on
just
arts
saying
and
it's
culture
not-
where I would
it's not
criticize
like-
my government.
But it's not that UCP could not find money to properly fund education. We're not talking about a huge, like, new piece of funding. We're talking about properly funding enrollment growth. Like, I want to pop a chart up here that I pulled from online that
You
shows.
didn't tell me
that-
about. Let's see.
Sorry, it's in there.
I see it now. Okay.
That Alberta has per student operating expenditures by far the lowest in Canada. So Canada's average is 13,000 per student. Alberta is sitting currently at 11,000 per student. I know that Danielle Smith thinks that is just fine, and she said so. But you can look at the graph to just see how every other jurisdiction in Canada is spending more money per student on education spending than Alberta is. And that is one of the problems that the teachers are talking about.
Okay, so they talk about it. They ask for it. I guess it's just like you walk away from the table until the government's good. Like, it doesn't sound critical. Like, sure, there's a graph that's saying that per student, we support less. We also have more choice in education than any other province. But I do think that, like, again, you just got an additional ask of 1,000 teachers. You want classroom sizes adjusted. Like, where is their line? I just don't get it. I feel like they just want to strike, and they just want to try and make this political as opposed to having rational decisions. Again, I'll come back to there's classrooms, like, you actually look at average classrooms and they're down. They're not all in the 30, 32. Most of my friends' kids are in 21, 24.
But some of that's
I
just
think-
fluctuations in the amount of kids in any given class.
But we have
at any moment.
250,000 people injected into our province. Like, you'd think that those mathematically would go
That might
up.
just mean, like, grade 4s have less this year and grade 3s have way too many. Like, it's not, you can't just look at one class and be like, well, they only have 35
but
this year.
I think this is a challenge with how we actually, I'll say code a student. Like, we give 1 unit per person, and those that are, average students that need a little bit of support but can operate. There's then, like, the more advanced or the gifted students that can clearly operate independently versus some of them that have higher needs. And
I've heard
I
this
think when
before.
challenged,
We could not
Yeah.
just put all the kids who need special help into a corner. We can't.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said when you're no, well, I think that there is classrooms and environments for some that have severe needs and actually need like 1 EA 2 per student ratio. But there's also ways like this inclusive mentality that's been approached isn't actually helping the students that need it, which are the average students. Teacher is spending 80%
But you know what
of their
would help the
time.
average students? Spending enough per kid. This is what teachers are calling for. They're saying we have too much classroom complexity. Our classrooms are too big. We don't have the supports that we need. Properly fund education, or we're going to lose teachers, which we have been losing teachers in numbers over the years.
But we
And
assess
that's why
kids.
we need
We
more
know
education
which
funding.
kids know. We should be planning and putting kids that
But
need
there's no
more
money
needs
for it,
in
Erika.
different. Yes,
You
there is.
can't
There's systems. Fire
No,
half
there-
of the fucking ATA because they all sit there. They don't look like any other union where they're not frontline. They're all sitting there. I've presented
The
to them.
firing the ATA will not help get
No,
more supports into
redirect
schools for
them.
students that need them.
Take away the administrative costs that the
That is
union
not
is
the
getting
answer.
on
The
it.
answer is to properly fund the system.
But you can redirect funds 12% with some
You're just-
getting 17. Like, look at it like from a business case. And this is where I get so frustrated is like the ATA keeps growing and growing and growing in numbers. Those reps are not in classrooms. They are not on the ground. Look at how firefighters or ambulatory care or many other unions are doing where they actually also practice their craft to be able to speak to the front line. These people are administrators sitting and trying to do administrative tasks.
You
Like,
not
to me,
liking the union and how they operate is completely irrelevant.
But what I'm
because that
saying
is
is
up
the
to the
union is
membership of
getting-
the union.
But there's a lot of teachers that really don't like their union. Lots have left and
if
gone
there was
to
a
charter
majority-
schools. Charter
if there
schools
was-
have 15% increase this year.
But it doesn't matter. If there's a majority of people that don't like the way that the union is operating or the decisions that they make, they vote in that way. These teachers have voted over 95% in favor
Right.
of striking.
And there's people that have voted striking because they think the deal that they're getting from the ATA because their colleagues getting 17 and they're getting 12 or 13 is unfair. So I think that there's also details that the ATA sure as hell doesn't want to tell the story of, is that there's also things that are happening within the structure of the ATA that are impacting teachers. Do I think teachers should
it's
have
such
more
a-
money? Yes.
It's such
Do
a
I think that-
redirection.
But it's
now
true.
we're on how the ATA operates. Like the core
But
of
you
this
want to
is
find
will-
money, Cheryl? Do a business case of what's not working. Do an audit of how the
let's
entire education system
Let's
is
ask
done.
the government to do that. And let's ask them to do that on their whole budget and pull from stupid things that aren't benefiting any Albertans to fund things that most Alberta families are accessing, like public education.
Totally. Great. I am critical of all those things that I think were stupid moves by the government, and I've shared them. And we heard them from Pete that I said I agreed with last week. I'm not saying the government is perfect, but I'm saying like at this level, and I think that they should look at everything like a business case. I liked Pete's idea of like that financial working group that's looking at everything with the skills of being business owners, because that's how people run household budgets. Why are we not running a government like that? I support that. So two wrongs don't make a right. If you're critical that the government doesn't do it, my dad is going to like that one. The two wrongs don't make a right. That it doesn't give the ATA an excuse for poorly managing their membership.
Like that's not the issue.
Give a business case. Go
the
through
issue-
and look where you could have cost savings.
No,
as
this
an
is
entity.
not. This is not. TA is not the issue. For one, school boards decide how they're going to spend education dollars, not the ATA. So this, like the issue, you cannot like the ATA all you want. You cannot like their tactics. You cannot like their governance. That has really no bearing on what's going on between teachers right now and the government and the education minister.
Well, they're the ones at the bargaining table, Cheryl.
Yeah, but
For
they're
a collective
bargaining on
agreement.
behalf of their members. Like you saying, I don't like the way that they operate. Like that's fine, but
I think there's a lot of
Changing-
cost efficiency that they could show, and the government should then show also.
this is completely
No, I'm saying
digressed.
I'll
I appreciate
park that. I'll park that issue. I need you to answer, why is it always about more money, more money, more money,
Well,
and
I'll tell
not
you why
about
in
the
Alberta.
return on investment?
I'll tell you why in Alberta. Because every time, the one time that the NDP has been in power, the Conservatives had starved public institutions for a very long time. And so, yes, the answer in that case was to give money where money had not been given for decades, the proper amount of funding. And in this case, the same. Since 2019, we have not kept up with enrollment. We've had thousands of students enter our school, and we've thought that we could continue on the same budget no matter how many students enter our school. And that has led to widespread problems, including massive class sizes, complexity that we can't keep up with, and teachers leaving the system. And now we've reached a breaking point. And part of the solution, yes, is to properly fund the education system.
Okay, but I believe that the government is properly funding. I think that the challenges
I just
are
showed you a
how
chart that shows
funding
it's
is.
not.
Well, I'm like, well, how does this work? Like, it's meaning when I look at this, it's like, oh, okay, so how much is invested in the student versus actually in the student? Like, this is where I may be
But this
critical
is
of the system. Like, how much do we pay to all of the
but this is
administration and the bureau?
basic.
That's all of it.
But basic math, Erica, is if I have 6 students and I'm spending $6 on 6 students, and now I have 12 students and I still only have $6 for those for those now 12 students. Now I have 50 cents a student instead of $1 a student. And that is a simple way to explain what is currently going on in Alberta's education system. And it's not sustainable.
And I don't think it's sustainable, but I think the increases have been made in this year's budget. We've put additional resources into student growth. Do I think that you're going to turn it all in 1 year or 2 years when we have an influx of 250,000 people that we did not ask to come to our province or call this home because everywhere else is too, like, people can't afford to live there, so
It's
they move
everyone
here.
else's fault, is what you're saying.
No, I'm saying they did adjust it. This budget was a huge, huge deficit, way more than I'm comfortable with, in order to meet a lot of those needs. Is it perfect? No. But do I think that they were trying to take a balanced approach? Absolutely. Is everyone going to be thrilled? No. Is this a case where, like, the deal on the table, especially with the revisions and the compromise that TIBA is coming with and the government is coming with, are they a balanced approach? I believe so. I just don't think that the teachers union will ever be satisfied, and they're making this super political, and who is going to be impacted is the children.
So
And
let me
this
get
is
this
the big.
straight. When we ban books and school boards implement them, the school boards are making it political. When education is chronically underfunded and teachers push back, teachers are making it political. It could be that if every policy that the government brings in without consultation becomes political, it might be the government that's making it political.
There is consultation on collective bargaining. That's the whole intent of collective bargaining. So there was conversations. They did get a huge increase to 12% over 4 years. They did get a mass, like, to me, I'm like, I see a lot of wins in us moving towards the right direction for public education. Do I think that chart, and I'm could next time find something else that contradicts it. But do I think that we could do better? Absolutely. Are we in a fiscal position where we have any wiggle room to not go up in our deficit? We are now projected to be
But
a
we're
surplus
finding
originally,
money
and
for
we're
other
not.
things. But we're finding money for other things. And I would
I
say
can be
public
critical of
education
that,
should be at
but
the
you
top
guys
of the
would fund it
list.
too.
But we're not talking about us. We're talking about the people who have the pen on the budget right now. And I would say the government has prioritized a lot of silly things to spend money on, and public education should be at the top of the list right under healthcare. But it's not. They found money for many other things, and they haven't found money for this.
And like I said, I've been critical of some of those, let's just call them pet projects or things that they think add value. I do agree. However, your party has never said that they would. I know, but I get that. But I'm saying it's really easy for you to criticize this government that's in power. But the difference is that the NDP isn't showing solutions of how they would do this. They're just saying give more money. Well, also you have a huge deficit and you're not fiscally responsible. You're supposed to be. Like, I just feel like they're talking from both sides of their mouths, and it's frustrating because it's misleading people. And so I do think that is part of the conversation. Part of the conversation is our ideologies. You get the benefit of crapping on my party and me crapping on them because they're the government. But I have never seen the alternative solution besides Naheed Nenshi saying and that we're horrible people and
but I don't care,
teachers,
Erika. Take the
NDP
out of it completely. Like, we're talking about the front
lines.
But I think
that's
to the government.
But if you're talking about people that don't watch as much stuff as we do, aren't in the details, that is misleading the public. So I do think it's an important part of the conversation. You don't because it doesn't help your argument.
No, but we're not even talking about the NDP. We're talking about frontline workers pushing back against the government.
But I'm asking you the solution, and your party doesn't have one. So fine, I'll ask you.
What is the solution? Stop getting in billion-dollar fights with coal companies and fund education.
$1 billion isn't going to, it's not billions of dollars, and it's not going to offset this education thing. You can't assume that you're going to, because they're going to get sued for.
There are many places in the budget you could pull from.
I would love if people actually came with solutions. I'd love if the ATA came with solutions.
But this is the job of finance and Treasury Board, is to balance all the priorities and say what's at the top and what's at the bottom, and the stuff at the bottom has to get knocked off when we have massive deficits. Education should be at the top. That is the
And I
government's
think
job.
when you look at the collective bargaining, they are. They're getting the best deal.
But they're not, because they haven't got
in the
any
country.
funding.
But they are. Then pick. If you're the ATA, do you want the salary increase? Like,
They
if you want
don't
it,
have to. It's the government's job to choose to fund education.
well, maybe the system's failing itself. Look at how many people are opting out of public school system. That's a whole different
Oh my God.
conversation.
Okay.
But we did keep people
If we're gonna
on our
pivot,
timeline. Okay.
let's pivot
You
to our
get to
next
start.
topic.
Okay, you go.
No, I wouldn't have even chosen this if
I know. I
was
just thought
picking
I want to
topics
know
today. So
your
you go ahead.
thought.
I will.
Okay,
But go ahead and
so
set it up.
yes. So lastly, and we're gonna make this one quick, is that it appears Pierre Poilievre, after winning his by-election, is back and ready to take another run at being prime minister. Where these policies were in the election is an aside, because I do think they resonate. He's come out with policies that address immigration, which has a huge impact on all of the funding things we were talking about. But I also want to talk about this stand on guard principle, which is a proposed amendment to the criminal code because it has to do with public safety. And public safety is also a huge thing that we talk about on this show that would ensure Canadians would be thrown in jail for simply defending their home, their family, and themselves. And so that's what the current criminal code is. They would want some amendments to it. This happened earlier this week. Sean Fraser, the federal minister of justice and attorney general, came out calling this a Wild West policy. So I just want to ask you, Cheryl, based on what you know of this stand on guard policy, that's basically like you protect your home, you protect your family. Victims shouldn't be villains. How do you feel about this?
Gotta give the guy credit. He's back after his by-election win and introducing policies. He wants to get rid of temporary foreign workers. He wants to introduce this stand on guard policy. I will give him credit. He's making news. But is it necessary is another question. I just want to read Sean Fraser's whole tweet for you, because the first tweet says, Canadians already have the right to defend themselves under a law that Prime Minister Harper brought in with Poilievre's support. Now, just chasing photo ops by attacking police for doing their job. I trust police to lay charges and judges to consider evidence over Pierre playing cops and robbers. And then goes on to say, this isn't the Wild West, it's Canada. Canadians deserve real solutions that make us safer, not slogans that inspire fear and chaos for Pierre's political survival. And I mean, if you look at the details around this and you look at jurisdictions that have laws similar to what Pierre is proposing, I don't see the problem that we're solving. Other than
Meaning what?
Pierre gets some great Facebook hits.
See, and I look at it from, listen, they've also coming with, and they have not pivoted on bail reform. We are letting criminals out again and again.
No, let's talk about this specific issue.
Okay, but I'm saying they've done a bunch of stuff where public safety is still an issue. It was an issue 3 years ago. It is not getting any better. People blamed it on the fact that COVID and people were home and people were in dire needs, that crime was going up. We have one of the scariest places in the world to live right now. There's people breaking into homes, the approach as we've seen, and I think of that meme when the police
if you think
officer...
this is the scariest place in the world to live, you have not traveled.
I have traveled lots of places, and I've
But
actually
is not the scariest place
the
in the world
only
to
other
live.
place... I think you go downtown Edmonton, go down Calgary. The fact that it's just
Erika.
open drugs, it's people coming up to you, people getting stabbed in public transit. I would say South Africa was the only other scariest place I've been to. Feeling
thank
someone
goodness
was
we're
going
not
to jump
traveling
me.
to the actual scariest places in the world, most dangerous places in the world, because they don't compare to
Okay, but
downtown
don't pivot
Edmonton.
off of what I was saying is that we haven't solved public safety. What Sean Fraser is saying is prove where you've lowered public safety. Prove that our borders are secure. You've now finally invested in our military and our armed forces, but is that also investing in our front lines, in our school or in our parks and in our downtowns? And look at the crime that we have. It just keeps escalating. So I think that there is a problem to be solved. I think that there's multiple prongs to this. The biggest thing is can you tell me right now that if someone entered your home, you wouldn't do whatever is necessary to protect your family?
Yes, of course, but that protection for me already exists, and that's the point.
In what?
And I want
In what way? My house was almost broken. My car was broken into last night.
I just read it to you that Canadians already have the right to defend themselves under current law. They have self-defense is protected as long as reasonable circumstances, and it's the job of the Crown to prove otherwise.
But we've seen cases on cases. There was someone that came in and had 6 guys and defended himself, and now he's going to jail because he used force on people breaking into their house. We hear these stories every day, Cheryl.
But let's just look at the actual stats on those stories, because like I said earlier, it's easy for the Conservatives to pick an instance and say, this should have never happened. We need a blanket policy that reforms all the bad things that are happening in Canada because we can hold up this one example of everything that is wrong with this country. But let's look, because Andrew Coyne wrote a really great column on this, looking at statistics, trying to understand what the actual impact would be. And I just want to read some of the stats from that column, because he said statistics show the number of break-in enters in Canada at 293 per 100,000 people in the population has fallen 75% since its peak since 1998. And right now in Canada, it is lower than at any time since at least the 1960s. He also said about 2/3 of break-ins are residential. About 1% of residential break-ins result in violence. So now we're looking at about 2 break-ins per 100,000 people in Canada. And when we're looking at 2 break-ins per 100,000 people where a violent act is committed on either side, the exact proportion of those charged in those cases against householders, we couldn't even record it. It's tiny. It's a fragment piece of the population. So to say we need this sweeping legislation to make changes to protect Canada, the stats show like the number of people this would affect, it's negligible.
Join a Facebook group then, because I can tell you when I lived in Westmount in Edmonton that there was burglaries, people with cameras. I had the cops come to our house on Christmas. This is why we rely on data and
not just our personal experiences.
So we had fucking people, and they're like, oh, that guy broke into 5 other houses. He just got out on bail yesterday. He's going back in now, but he'll be out next week.
Was that when people were in their homes that they had an altercation with?
This was last year.
No, did they have an altercation with the person?
I know lots of people where people have entered their homes. There's people that have people entering their homes. And so say someone enters your home. This is where I think the system is broken and why I support this. People come into your home. Like there was police officers, the police in Toronto said, leave your keys at your front door because that's what they're breaking into your home for. Make it easy for them.
I know, but that's a different, like if you want to say, let's stop break and enters, that would take a different kind of intervention than let's give people the power to shoot people if they come on their property.
But that's not what this policy is about. It is that you can protect yourself. If someone comes into your house with a gun, I am a gun owner. I cannot legally have my gun and my ammo together. Fine rule. If someone broke into my house and I somehow was able to put those 2 things together and shoot someone to protect my family, I would likely go to jail because there's not really a physical way that in the time of a break-in that happens. So my best bet is to beat them with a bat or stab them with a knife. And a lot of times there's cases that have been shared in the last couple of months of people that go to jail for assaulting the villain.
I'm telling you, whatever you're reading on social media or in your Facebook groups, the statistics do not support it. There are not a vast number of people. Are they reported? Well, if they're getting convicted,
15 hours to get the police.
No, but we're talking about people being charged for someone entering their house and having an altercation with them. If that's happening, yes, of course it's recorded because they are convicted and charged of something. So yes, the statistics should be accurate because we're talking about people being held responsible for defending their homes. Yes, the statistics would be accurate. And the statistics, I cannot say statistics, say it's not happening in the amount that you are suggesting it's happening. It's happening a negligible amount.
Attempts or actual getting in. I think that's the difference.
It doesn't matter. We're talking about altercations.
It does matter because the difference
charged.
is that like we have such a high level and we have a society that is hugging thugs and treating villains like victims and victims like villains.
That. It's easy to say that. And I know that these are Poilievre's talking points. The stats don't back it up. You can hold up whatever example you want to say, look at this rampant problem, but the stats don't back it up. And if you want to raise stories of like, here's a problem we need to solve in the States where there is this in many jurisdictions, you can defend your home. And of course you can have a gun. We just saw this 11-year-old kid get shot for playing Nicky Nicky Nine Doors. Like we've seen in the States in places where castle legislation has come into place, more instances of violence, more instances of murder because people feel like they can do whatever they want if someone enters their property.
Our gun rules and to get your gun in Canada are so apples to oranges to the States that I don't think that is a fair example. We also have most of our violence that is associated with guns or firearms are illegal, not the legal owners. I think the problem here is that, and the reason this whole legislation is coming coming up is because law and order is a fundamental part of our society, norms, and our democracy. And unfortunately, given people see shit that's not public, like not meant for public safety in everywhere of their lives, the one place that they can feel safe is in the comfort of their own home. And we've now seen instances where people don't feel that way. I think there's a loss in the confidence of government to manage crime and manage law and order, that it's got to this point. Do I think it's sad that we're at this point where these types of principles have to be introduced because people feel that they're not safe in their own home and that they can't protect their family? And there's horrible stories about individuals. I think it comes down to the system being broken. And I can't believe that we're even, to be honest, I wanted to have this conversation because I wanted to understand where you sat on this, because I don't understand how anyone, ideological aside, that like any ideology, how you can actually not believe that you should protect your own
because we
family.
already have that power. It's not that anyone doesn't
But we
believe that you should be able to. We
Our
do.
system's working
Harper
against
brought
us.
it in, and the stats
And Harper
show you're
could have been wrong.
wrong.
But if you look at the time that Harper brought it in, that doesn't mean just because Pierre voted on it decades ago. And I think when you come to stats versus someone's livelihood and the protection of their company or their family, that you could throw any stat and it's like, but I don't feel safe. I don't think that our system
Okay, but
is
why
protecting
don't we feel
me.
safe is because someone's holding up a red flag and saying this is a rampant problem when it's not. Creating problem when it's not for political opportunities is exactly what Pierre Poilievre is especially good at, and exactly what's happening here. We do not have a rampant problem of people being convicted defending their homes. We do not. It's not in the stats. It's not in the court system. It is not a problem right now. And Canadian homeowners already have the right to defend themselves. So it's not that people don't want this right. It's that we already have it, and there isn't a problem in the first place.
If I shot someone that came into my house with a gun, I can guarantee, I learned it in my firearms RPAL and PAL courses, that I would go to jail, because there's no way physically that I should be able to unlock my trigger, unlock my gun lock, put my ammo that's stored separately into my gun to protect myself. It can't be loaded. I
But
can't have
Pierre's not
a full...
proposing to change that.
What do you mean?
He's not proposing to change gun
and
laws.
I would support it, but I think the difference is that you can actually protect yourself in your own home. This is where it's not really about firearms as much as it is about protecting yourself. So I'm saying, like, we have strict rules for that reason. However, there's lots of instances where people are having people break and enter into their home. The message from the police services and law and order is to keep your door open and just give them what they're coming here for. I think it's an ass-backwards system. And if Pierre is going to be the only one to talk about it, I just am surprised that the Liberal government isn't sitting here, because obviously, Cheryl, it's not working. Look at the 5%, 10% that's experiencing this. Say that to someone that lost their family because someone came in. Like, I don't think facts matter to those people. If this
Erika,
happens, something is wrong with our legal system.
You're conflating a whole bunch of issues together. We can totally say there's too many carjackings. We can totally say there's too many break and enters. We can say there's too much violence in downtown Edmonton. You can say all of those things, but this proposed change to legislation does not change any of that. All this is saying is that people should be able to defend themselves if someone enters their home. And what I'm saying is the facts would tell you that no one is getting charged, hardly anyone, negligible amount of people are being charged for defending themselves when someone enters their home.
Or they're dead. Like, that's the other thing. Then the reason we're here, Cheryl, is because nobody feels safe in any other environment. And we've just given up on thinking that the government's going to do what they need to do to protect us. The only place you can is your sacred place. Well, we went over time, I see. And we're just a wee little bit. But I have a feeling that the season is actually going to be more dramatic. I wanted to throw something in there last just as a quick take. And I think we really covered it thoroughly. I cannot also wait to talk to you about the NDP leadership, seeing Naheed Nenshi in the House, because I think it's going to be less exciting than others think it may be, and that he might actually help our numbers as Pierre Poilievre goes up in numbers. I suspect that Naheed Nenshi being in the House may have the same impact for the UCP, but we will see. Until next time, though, make sure you follow us on X, Instagram, and TikTok.
And of course, as Erika mentioned, the federal NDP leadership race kicked off this week. Really excited to talk about that. I know based on your commentary on my social media platforms, you're not pumped about it, but once we have some people declared their candidacy, I think it will be interesting to talk about how the party rebuilt itself. Of course, make sure that you and your friends all like and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you all next week.
The Discourse is hosted by Cheryl Oates and Erika Barudis. Follow on Instagram @TheDiscoursePod. Subscribe to the Discourse on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.